Hello everyone and welcome back to another Let's Talk D&D. So if you're watching this, hi, you're in the future, because I'm recording this last week from your perspective, and chances are if you're watching this, I'm currently reading the 2025 new Monster Manual, because that's roughly when I'm told I can get it from my comic shop. So I'll probably be doing that, and I want to spend the time reading it and looking at it, and hopefully cooking up some nice stuff for you guys for the coming weeks. But until then, we're going to talk about it in the sense that I'm going to tell you guys the top 7 things, because that's pretty much the number of things I thought of that I kind of want to see from this Monster Manual. And if you have anything that you definitely want to see from the Monster Manual, go ahead and write it in the comments. So let's see here. First thing is backwards compatibility rules. I really think this is important, especially because one of the big selling points of the 2024 rule set, the 5.5 as you might call it, is that it is backwards compatible. It's backwards compatible with backgrounds, it's backwards compatible with species, it's backwards compatible with classes. So I don't see any reason why it shouldn't be backwards compatible with monsters as well. It's just if there's a new stat block for a monster, use the new stat block for a monster. And if there's no stat block for a monster in there, use the old stat block. Or maybe use the old stat block, but maybe like it'll say like add this much HP, for, add like 10% of the HP or something, rounded up or down or something. Because I think there's a lot of creatures in, the non main set of books. Like, you have the Monster Manual, you have the Monsters of the Multiverse, those are good. But, like, Spelljammer, I think, has a lot of cool monsters. I love that they're space whales. They don't even have to be space whales. If you just want whales flying around your sky, you can do that, I definitely at some point want to send the killer clowns that they have in the Spelljammer module against my players, because that would be a fun one to do. I got a lot of fun ideas for that. But yeah, so I think definitely having those backwards compatibility rules would be nice, because there's lots of stuff that I like to pull in from other settings like Eberron and Spelljammer and Planescape. Uh, but again, that's low on the wish list. But hopefully it happens. I think it should happen anyway. Next, better alignment variety, and what I mean by that is, you go into the Monster Manual, the old Monster Manual, and a lot of what you'll see is creatures that are evil for the most part, because let's face it, most of the creatures that you're fighting are going to be evil creatures, because typically, most campaigns are in the good to neutral setting. You're fighting evil things, you're trying to, like, bring justice to a kingdom, you're trying to stop some great evil that's going to destroy the world. So most players are in that good to neutral alignment. But of course, sometimes we like to play evil characters and run an evil campaign. And sometimes the forces of, like, good and law aren't that good, because honestly, like, one of the things, I'm not a huge Supernatural fan, but one of the things I do love about Supernatural is the fact that the angels are basically just as bad as the demons. They're even if they have good intentions, they're sometimes causing problems because they just don't understand mortality and the mortal perspective. So I think what would be cool is to see more high-level monsters that are like not just angels, but like, maybe like some neutral nature deities. One of the things I love about the 5e Planescape books is that they have those higher level Modrons, other than like, I think the 5 you get from the Monster Manual, and that's cool because that's something where, like, you could have a story where you have that, like the oppressive law where, like, everything is micromanaged according to this very cold calculating machine, and that's just not how the world works, and you have to fight against that. So I'd like to see, like, more good, or even like some more things leaning towards chaotic, because I think there's a lot of good stories you can tell with, chaotic minded beings. Even if they're not necessarily evil. If you go into the Great Wheel cosmology, Isgard, where it's basically Valhalla, like where they put Valhalla, and it's this area where, like, the warriors go every day, they fight, and they get resurrected every day. So again, like that could be a thing, because like they're still good, but they're still very warlike, and that means they're probably going to butt heads with like the angels in Mount Celestia. So that's something I would like to see, is a little more variety in that regard. Don't get me wrong, it's great to have lots of evil things to fight, but it's nice to have some variety in there. Okay, next thing that I want to see is I want to see better rules for modifying stat blocks. It's no strangers that DMs like to, modify and homebrew monsters, and some of them are really good at it. But I think for me, I hesitated for a good long while to even try that. And even when I first tried it, it was a very simple thing. I basically made Gligar in D&D. I basically took a bat, I gave it the Stinger ability from a Scorpion. Boom, it's a Gligar. It's a flying Gligar. It was funny. When I finally ran that one, uh, I asked the player that basically tripped the encounter. I said, and I go, yeah, Gligar, the Pokemon? And he goes, yeah, that's my favorite. I go, not anymore. Roll initiative. But it would be nice to have, like, a better set of rules or guidelines for that. Not that everything needs to be rules, and of course, like, even if there are rules, they're meant to be broken. But especially for new DMs that, like, have a creative idea that's maybe not in the monster manual, and they're worried about either making it too strong and wiping their players, or making it too weak and the players just aren't interested in it. It would be nice to have those guidelines of how to go from there, rather than just doing the trial and error of it all. And I think especially with the new rule set, and especially if they do backwards compatibility, that's something that should be addressed. And this kind of goes into some of the other things I talk about later. Let's see. So number 4, again, this kind of goes back to the previous two, but I want to see better endgame creatures. They have the Tarrasque in, the old monster manual, and that is, at least in theory, the strongest creature in there. And of course, there's a running joke that it's actually not that strong. Like, it doesn't have a ranged attack, so pretty much if you can fly above its reach, you can just blast magic down on it, with impunity. So again, a lot of DMs will often modify that stat block. They will give it like a breath weapon, like a dragon, and basically make a Godzilla. But I would love to see things other than the Tarrasque too. I think it'd be cool to see, like, they do have dragons, and dragons are nice too. It is called Dungeons and Dragons after all. But I mean, it would also be cool to see like a really good a really good endgame demon, a really good endgame angel. Maybe like an angry nature spirit. All these things like the limit of an endgame like BBEG basically is only limited by your imagination. And yet, again, the strongest thing in that original monster manual is the Tarrasque. And honestly, it's one of the reasons why I do like a lot of these supplemental books that they put out. I know a lot of people are critical of them, and I get it, because sometimes it just feels like Wizards are just milking us. And let's face it, they're a company. They're trying to make money, and sometimes they get greedy. A lot of times they get greedy. But at the same time, like Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, one of my favorite things about that book is they have stat blocks for basically an aspect of Bahamut and an aspect of Tiamat, which are really great, because those are good characters that you can put into your campaign, and they're not even in the monster manual. I would love to see aspects for other gods, like, even if it was like a generic one, okay, so like the clerics have the domains, and it would be really cool if they have like a make your own aspect section, where it's like, okay, if you want to make Thor, for example, you'll probably, Thor's domains, I think, are storms and war. Well, storms, obviously, but I think he's also war. So let's say it's like, okay, you want to make an aspect of Thor. So you can basically, and it's like, okay, give it this HP, give it this, and then choose some of these things to put on it. And, you could have all your, like, storm-based attacks, especially lightning, and then you could have a lot of your, like, you can have, like, some weapon things, like, his hammer can get thrown and come back to him. Things like that. And that would be neat, because then it's like, because obviously they're not going to be able to make every single god. Like, especially if even if they only focus on, like, the D&D specific ones, like Coralon or Gruumsh. It would be nice to be able to go, hey, you want your character to play an aspect of Gruumsh in D&D? Okay, Gruumsh is basically a war god. Take all these things to make it a war deity, and then, you can add, and then choose your wingdings. And I think that'd be such a great thing to add, because honestly, let your players fight gods. One of the things, I actually commented this on a Ginny D video, and she ended up replying and liking it, and that just made my day when that happened. But it's like I always have this concept of, it's like, okay, like these gods embody these forces of nature, like winter and war and storms and life and nature. So imagine if, like, your players go and they kill Auril, who is basically this kind of evil strong god. So yeah, of course, like, your characters are going to have reasons to want to fight her because she's not that nice. But then what happens when you kill her? Well, you literally killed winter. So now it's just magical global warming. It's like there's going to be no ice anymore. The snow caps are going to start melting. There's going to be no more winter. There's going to be no more polar ice caps. Things are going to start flooding. And then at that point, the impetus for the next section of the campaign can be, oh my god, we kind of fucked up the world, even though we were trying to do the right thing. Now we have to fix it. So that's something I would love to see. I would love to see those kind of, like, better endgame creatures that kind of, give you other challenges rather than just, okay, here's an endgame dragon, here's an endgame Tarrasque. I think the Kraken's a pretty high. That's the thing. It's like I can't even think of some of the better endgame ones. Like, honestly, my favorite is Tiamat and Bahamut. It's like, what better thing? Like Tiamat is iconic in D&D. But, like, honestly, Tiamat should have been in the first Monster Manual. Saying that right now. She should have been in the first Monster Manual. She's an iconic D&D creature to fight. Put her in there. But that's neither here nor there. Next, and I think we're pretty much going to get this because I do watch other D&D channels, and unlike me, they actually get the preview version that they can use for reviewing. And that's stronger monsters, because especially since the players seem to be buffed really high in the new player's handbook, you're going to need stronger monsters. And players being overpowered has been a problem in D&D for a long time now. Like even just talking in 5e, pretty much since the inception of 5e. There's always this big problem of the players are too strong. The CR system did not work. They did replace it with that new system, which I covered when I covered the Dungeon Master's Guide. And I really hope that not only are the creatures stronger, but that the experience spending thing they have in the Dungeon Master Guide actually works better for creating the kind of encounter you want. Whether it's, hey, I want my players to have an easy encounter to just kind of set the tone of this next section, to this is going to be the endgame boss. I want my players to sweat. Yeah, so that's what I want. Next thing I want is better stat block stratification. And here's what I mean by that, is if you look in the old Monster Manual, a lot of the dragons, follow the same dynamic. Is you have the Wyrmling, then you have the young adult, and then you have the adult, and then you have the ancient. And then if you go into Fizzbands, they actually give more, where it's like the Great Worms. I want to see that for other things other than, like, dragons and demons, because even the demons are like, okay, small, and builds up. But you don't see that for certain things. Like take, for example, the Drow. And this is actually going to touch on my last one. But the Drow are all kind of like in this, certain range. They're stratified a little bit. But it's one of those things where if you're not at that range yet and they're too strong, or if you're past that range and they're too weak, you're pretty much never going to encounter them again as an enemy. And I don't really like that. Another good example is like the vampires. You pretty much have the spawn, and you have the master vampire. If you want to run a vampire any lower or any higher, you don't have those options. Not again, barring homebrew, but again, that's why we want homebrew rules. Um, but I think that's something I want, and again, this will kind of go into the last point, because I think it's one of those things where, like, sometimes you want to start your campaign with fighting a dragon. Sometimes you want to start your campaign by fighting vampires. Sometimes you want to end your campaign fighting vampires, even if the CR for the vampires is still very low. So I think it'd be a nice feature to have if there was a little more stratification like that, where it's like, hey, here's how you take this creature and keep it relevant all throughout your campaign. This way, and not that you have to use it throughout the whole campaign, but it's when you want that kind of creature in there, when you want to add a hag, when you want to add a dragon, when you want to add a vampire, when you want to add a mummy. You just go to the mummies and go, okay, my players are roughly this level, so this is going to be a stat block, and this is when I can put it in the campaign. Because this is the point where I want them to encounter that mummy. This is the part where they go to not Egypt. So again, I would like that. But this goes into my final one. This is the one that I really want. This is like the first thing I thought of. I want better humanoid stat blocks. And here's what I mean by that. Because, you look into the, old Monster Manual, you'll get things like, Bandit, Bandit Captain, Knights. But again, like, these are all mortal creatures. So their challenge ratings tend to be pretty low. Like, I want to say there might be like a 4 or a 5 in there for like just like baseline humanoids. For those generic, bandits, cultists, soldiers, guards, whatever have you. But I think the thing I really want, because when I think of BBEGs, I usually don't think those big monsters. I think humans. Like honestly, take away from Frankenstein, humans are the real monsters. Uh, it's like the Futurama trick. It's like, I have added all the evil parts of all the evilest creatures known to man to make the most evil one at all. And he opens his eyes, like, turns out it's man. And that's kind of how I am. Like to me, forces of nature can sometimes be boring because I take one or two philosophies. It's that the forces of nature, you either survive them, but you can't always kill them, or you kill them and then you have this kind of empty void that something has to fill. And that's usually that's the way I treat gods, is that if you kill literal winter, there is going to be no more winter. And that has its own nice set of challenges. But it's one of those things where it's like, especially like even as like the highest like level 15, I have ideas for humanoid characters that, aren't demons or aren't angels and aren't dragons and aren't vampires, but they're still just irredeemably bad people. And I don't want to be like, well, it's like, well, I have this idea for an evil paladin, and, the best stat block I have is going to be like the veteran, and, at a certain point, he's just not going to be usable in the campaign. It's like, no, I don't want that. I want him to be usable throughout the campaign, because honestly, to me, it's like he's going to be the BBEG. Like, that's the thing. And I mean, there's kind of ways. It's like okay, well, what do you do in that sort of case? Okay, well, you have to homebrew something. Well, now we come back to the first problem I addressed, which is we need homebrew and backwards compatibility rules, or at least guidelines to make it easier. Uh, the flip side of that, though, it's like okay, maybe you could make him a dragon, or not a dragon, make him a vampire, or make him one of these other evil things. Maybe you can co-op like the drow or the orc stat block that's a little higher or something. But even then, it's like you still have to go and you have to reflavor things a little bit. You have to give them a different weapon, which isn't too bad. Uh, give them a different weapon, but then you might have to switch to their spells, because or like maybe have like the evil head of a church, and like his thing is light, but it's less gentle light, and it's more like by light and fire be purged kind of vibes, and that's what makes him the villain of the campaign. Uh, but then you got to go and you have to switch the spells, which again there aren't really rules for. You kind of have to or at least not currently, but there's no rules for it. You kind of have to fiddle around with it and see what works. And when you're trying to make a campaign, that's time consuming. You don't want to be spending time on play testing. You want to be spending time putting the pieces on the board, getting the story set up, scheduling with the players, because let's face it, that's the real boss of D&D. And again, this is why I also talked about the stratification, is because that's a way to make things relevant, make a certain type of character relevant throughout the campaign. And again, this is also why I want the variety of, monsters. I don't want just demons to fight. I want to fight different types of angels, different types of nature spirits, different types of warriors, different types of paladins or priests or clerics or cultists. Because that's what makes it interesting. Like, that's what makes D&D interesting. And I think it's a very limiting thing to go, well, here's your cultist stat block. It's pretty much going to become obsolete by like level 4 or something like that. So I definitely want that in there. And again, it would be nice if there was like a modular way to deal with those. Like okay, it's like you have like let's just go with the soldier, because let's face it, disposable cannon fodder. Maybe they're orc soldier, maybe they're elf soldiers, maybe they're devoted to a certain cult, whatever. But what's going to be their thing? They're going to wear armor. They're going to have like a spear or a sword. They're probably going to have a shield. Maybe they'll have a great weapon. Again, depending on how you want to create that. And so it'd be nice to have that guideline of like okay, it's like you're moving into a new tier. So the guards need to be more powerful, because these aren't like outpost guards. These are like, the elite inner temple guards, and they're guarding the BBEG. So it's like, maybe in addition to their armor, they have, maybe they have a +1 weapon. Maybe they actually know a little magic, so they have a few spells. It's kind of the difference between fighting stormtroopers and then fighting the Red Guards in Star Wars. It's going to be a different thing. It's going to be a different thing entirely. Because, again, those are like the elite guards. They're completely different things. But at the same time, they serve the same function of they are guards. So, and another thing I'd like to is like, and I always found this a little weird, because it's like you have, because again, old Monster Manual, you have like the stat blocks for a few different drow things. It's like a drow priestess, a drow assassin. For the orcs, you have the standard orc, you have the orc chief, you have the Eye of Garumsh, and even goblins. You got a few different sorts of them. I think what Wizards should really do, and I'm not sure if they're going to do this or not in the Monster Manual, but I think what they should really do is be like, hey, here's a generic bandit. It can be, and well, they kind of do that. But this bandit can be a goblin, this bandit can be an orc, this bandit can be a drow, this bandit can be a human. And you could do the same thing for any of these kind of NBC stat blocks. And I think that would be a lot better than having very orc-specific blocks. Because again, if you're homebrewing, orcs in one setting could be radically different from orcs in another setting. Like imagine this. Let's say you made a setting where all the races are kind of like on even footing in terms of, like, they all have their own nation. They're all kind of on even footing. Maybe they have kind of different flavors. So you could have a paladin stat block, and you could go, okay, here's what the elf paladin stat block looks like, and with those guidelines to tweak it, like, okay, they're elves, so they might have like more naturey spells. Dwarves might have more practical spells, like even just on cantrips. Like maybe the elves, a lot of them, you get that prestidigitation because they use it to clean their armor, because they always want their armor looking nice. But then you have dwarves who are all about like the more pragmatic. They don't necessarily need to look pretty, but at the same time, it's like they want their weapons to be effective. They want to be able to pair well, so they get that mending cantrip. And then you have the orcs. Well, maybe the orcs are a little more, they're a little more boisterous. They're all about making a big impression, so that they get the thaumaturgy cantrip. And so this way, you can have kind of one stat block by switching out the spells and having to be like, okay, like, at this level, a paladin will have like level 1 spell, level 2 spell, level 3 spell, times however many, and basically kind of treat them like a player, but at the same time, it's like you can modify that to mean so many things. Like honestly, again, even like the Oathbreaker Paladin, there's the Oathbreaker stat block in the monster manual. There's only one CR rating for that Oathbreaker. But imagine you wanted to make an Oathbreaker of any sort of different level, or any sort of different flavor. Like maybe you have an Oathbreaker, like maybe the Oathbreaker is not always the same thing. Because maybe the Oathbreaker for like an Oath of the Ancients is a little bit different from, say, a Vengeance Oathbreaker. Again, that would be just like really interesting, where you could have almost like these twisted versions of these spells. And again, like I doubt they did that. I kind of hope they did, or they have something like that. From what I saw in Dungeon Dude, it seems like they might have better NPC making rules, and I think that would kind of go towards this. But again, like I definitely want that variety of. I want to be able to take a character and keep them relevant throughout the campaign, regardless of what they are, even like whether it's an enemy or an ally. Because maybe your party has their favorite NPC, and you've decided not to be evil and destroy that NPC so that they could feel the heartbreak of losing that character. So like they first meet him, maybe he's like a recruit in the guards or something. So like he's new, he's wet behind the ears. And he starts with like the basic, like maybe he just has like a spear and maybe not even a shield. But then they go out adventuring, they come back to town a few times, and they see like, oh, like he's actually got a promotion, and he has that better stat block and that better equipment, and he's actually gotten just a lot better in general. Like his stats have become those new improved stats. So he's better at his job now, just in addition to having the better gear. And then it gets to the point where it's like, well, this big evil thing, like the Tarrasque is coming to the town, and now your party has this NPC that can fight beside them, lay it down with them, and then you kill that character to make your players feel something. I'm evil. I'm very evil like that. But yeah. So and again, this would be good for dragons. And again, great. Okay. Dragon Prince on Netflix. So last season was horrible. Oh my god. But take that very basic premise. It's like the players find this egg, and they find out it belongs to like a gold dragon, and they're like, okay, we're going like our quest is going to be to go on an adventure to bring this egg back, back to its parent, and then of course and then partway through it hatches. And then it starts to, well, it probably wouldn't grow up that fast. I guess it depends on how fast you want your dragons to grow up. But it's one of those things or like, maybe in a future campaign in the same setting, that dragon's going to live for hundreds of years. And so, maybe at one point the players go, oh yeah, go talk to this dragon. He's pretty young. He's only 200 years old, but he has experience in this. And they go, and it's the dragon from the first campaign. You can't tell me that would not be awesome. And you can do that when you have these stratified things. I mean, granted, dragons have that already. But that would be the cool thing to do. Like, I want this so bad for so many different things. Like, again, even hags. From what I understand, they have like an arch hag in there that's going to be pretty powerful for the 2025 one. So again, that would be a cool one where like, like maybe you want the hag to be the main villain. Starts out small, but then like she does things, she gains more and more power, she expands her covenant, and next thing you know, she's an arch hag and she's the BBEG. So yeah, that's why I really wanted, like honestly, that last one was like 90% of why I wanted to make this video, because I think it's such a good idea, and I really hope they do it. But I thought of other things too, so I just figured I'd just make this video. So yeah, that's just about everything I hope for from the 2025 Monster Manual. Again, if you guys have anything that you would really want to see, put it down in the comments. I would love to hear your guys' ideas. Again, I'm probably reading that book right now as you speak. Again, this is past Corey. Ignore the man behind the curtain. So yeah, I definitely want to read that, and I definitely want to like cook some things up for you guys, like things like combat tutorials, or I do want to do a series where I actually run tests and like create like start with 4 level 1 characters and just see how the actual EXP budget for encounter creation works and how well it works. But that's going to be for the future. That's for future Corey. Until then, thank you for joining me. As always, do all the YouTube things like subscribe, hit the bell icon because that's going to make this channel grow. If you guys make it grow, maybe I can get those advanced copies one day and get some stuff to you early. But we'll see. That's hopes for a far distant future. Until then, keep doing what makes you awesome. Thank you very much, and goodbye.